attend this meeting so as to constitute a quorum of the Board of Education. Any such board member attendance will be for information gathering only and will not result in direct decision-making by the Board of Education at the committee meeting. Safety message by me. I look up every month what is the theme of the month, and March is Brain Injury Awareness Month. So that's, you know what, I think that's a good one for us to always look at. So I have a few little tips. Avoiding brain injuries for people of all ages. The best strategy is taking steps to reduce your chances of a brain injury. Ensure that children play in playgrounds made of shock-absorbing materials such as hardwood, mulch, or sand. Install stair gates and window guardrails in homes with young children. Wear properly fitting helmet when riding a bike, playing football, hockey, snow sports, skating, or snow skateboarding. Always wear a seatbelt. Don't drive under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Improve lighting and eliminate trip hazards in the home or workplace. Use non-slip mats and install grab bars next to the toilet and tub or shower for older adults. Install handrails on stairways. Improve balance and strength with regular physical activity. One other thing I want to share that goes with brain injury awareness is just concussion awareness, because they go hand in hand. So I think it's always important, especially for the group that we serve, youth, that we point out that concussions are very serious and we should all take them very seriously. If you think you've suffered a head injury, get checked, and take the recovery seriously too, because you only have one brain and those aren't easy to replace. I don't think you can do that. So serious long-term effects can happen as a result of concussion, and here's just a little bit more. Falls, not sports injuries, are the leading cause of concussions. You don't need to lose consciousness to have a concussion, and every concussion presents differently. Immediate medical attention is crucial if you suspect you have a concussion. And just a word, one of my children has suffered 3 concussions, not from sports. So, and what we have learned is you have to just wait it out and you can't rush it. Your brain can't recover that quickly. And so I think so many young people are ready to get back in the game or get ready to get back to what they're doing, but it's just best to wait and get yourself so that you're back to normal, because there are some pretty serious complications that can come from concussions, including suicide risks. So long-term suicide risks, that's something we don't want to mess with. Anyway, thanks for listening. I need a motion to adopt the March 3rd, 2025 agenda as presented. Looks like we have, were you waving your hand or not?
Yes.
Okay. Second. All in favor? Aye. That motion passes unanimously. 1.4, let's move on to the presentation on is there anything else? I want to make sure I'm not missing, because there were notes here. Where did that piece of paper go? Okay, we're good. 1.4, presentation on Act 20 statewide screening process overview by Dr. Allison DeGraff. And this was postponed from our February meeting that we had some scheduling conflicts. Thanks everyone for your flexibility so that we could get all of these topics. This might be a long one tonight, so thanks for hanging in there.
All right, well, good afternoon. Today I want to provide an update for you on the recent statewide required Act 20 K-3 reading assessments. I sent a copy to the board back in January of the letter that went out to all parents, because it was the first time we've ever administered this statewide assessment. So you received a copy as well of the letter that went to all families, letting them know that all students would be assessed in the state of Wisconsin during January on their literacy skills. So just a brief overview about what Act 20 is. It's that state law that requires us to assess early literacy skills for students in 4K through 3. P4J is only assessed in the fall and the spring, so they were not assessed this January. So it just helps us ensure that every child receives the support that they need in order to develop their reading skills. So a little bit about the statewide screener and what were our students assessed on across the state of Wisconsin. Wisconsin adopted the Ames Web Plus screener, which is from Pearson Learning Company, which you may be familiar with. And so all of our students were assessed using this screener. So I just want to briefly mention what the student was required to do. This was in a one-on-one setting and typically timed. So letter naming, that our kindergartners was one of the assessment components. They had 1 minute to say a certain number of letters that were presented visually to them, upper and lowercase. Letter word sound fluency, they were given 1 minute to say, they might have been presented a letter, they had to say the sound, or it could have been a syllable or a word depending on the grade level. They were also assessed on initial sounds, which focused on phonemic awareness, so they were given 4 different pictures, and they had to say what letter or what sound that picture started with. Phoneme segmentation asked students, the teacher would give the student a word, and they had to tell them what sounds they heard in that word. Then in kindergarten and first grade, there's auditory vocabulary. So they, with the auditory vocabulary, share a picture, and the students have to tell you what that picture, what's it a picture of. In second and third grade, the vocabulary assessment is the student, this one is not timed. They can take it in a small group on a computer with headphones. They are given a grade appropriate vocabulary word, and they have a multiple choice to choose the correct definition for that vocabulary word. Then all students in first through third grade completed a 1 minute timed oral reading fluency assessment with a passage appropriate for their grade level. So that is what our students were assessed on. So the results. So any student who fell below the 25th percentile has received a reading plan. And so again, all of the students in kindergarten through third grade were assessed. That included, when I say all students that were in special education, so students who may have already been identified with a specific learning disability in reading, all EL students regardless of their proficiency level, and then we had to notify all parents of the initial results of the assessment. Everybody, regardless of whether you're on a reading plan, received results from the assessment, but then they received an additional notification, and I'll talk about specifically what was in the reading plan that they received. So a little bit about how many students qualified for the reading plan. So doing a little research around the schools in Rock County, as well as I reached out to a few other districts that are similar demographics and size, ranged from 30 to 60% of students being on a reading plan in K-3. Janesville's at 40, around 40%. So we're on the lower end of that, range. And what was consistent in all of the districts, whether in Rock County or larger districts, is that first graders had the highest percentage of students on a reading plan. Now, the reason for that is I shared with you all of the components of the assessment, but the only component first through third grade qualifies for a reading plan on is their oral reading fluency. So even though they were assessed on everything else, only the oral reading fluency counts for your percentile rank on a reading plan. So for example, what's really difficult for first grade is we typically in our own curriculum don't start doing a reading fluency assessment on first graders until this spring, because we're focusing on how to teach them how to decode. And that's the focus, not how fast they can read. So it makes sense why so many first graders across the state have more reading plans than in the other grade levels. So we were about 10% higher in first grade than the other grade levels for reading plans as well.
I don't mean to interrupt your flow.
Oh, you're fine.
But if that was the result that just seems ridiculous. I'm sorry, to me as a first grader, you're just teaching them how to read and you're doing a fluency in the beginning of anyways. So why would the assessment choose to do that for first grade? It doesn't seem logical to me.
I guess that's what they chose to select across the state in first grade.
I know you're supposed to have all the answers, Allison.
but
I'm thinking here like, oh, the majority of first graders failed that. Well, yeah. Have you ever been a first grade teacher? It's like you're teaching them how to read and decode, like not fluency.
Right.
So I just wondered why that company would choose to include that. Was that like a state requirement that they had to include that oral fluency in first grade?
Yes, that was part of the state requirement, so part of it is hopefully after a year of implementation, there's some reflection
Lessons learned?
of lessons
Adjustments?
learned and what's
Okay.
appropriate and not appropriate, so I've shared my feedback on, some of the strengths of Act 20, which there definitely are some strengths, and then some things that, we need to maybe think about or reconsider, so hopefully those conversations continue, so. All right, so the reading plans, we have partnered with NextPath, which many districts in the state recently have as well. And they really are kind of the data warehouse or management piece. So all of our STAR reading data that you've heard about at board meetings as well too is housed in NextPath. But we worked closely with NextPath and other districts did as well too. So parents, they created a link for parents, so once their data goes into NextPath, the parents receive a link with their child's test results, and then if they're on a reading plan, they receive another link with the reading plan, so they have to acknowledge that they've received both of those reports. So we have a way to monitor that every parent has to receive the reading report, or the, reading assessment results. We also know it's very important, we want to explain those to parents, but part of the law is that they have to be notified within 10 days of the assessment ending. So it'd be really difficult to meet with all of those parents within 10 days, but we ensure that we sent a notification. So within the reading plan, so parent-teacher conferences happened last week. So any student on a reading plan, the teacher met with the parents and went over the reading plan with them, and as a district, we sent out kind of guidance on making sure we were consistent with our talking points and supporting teachers in that as well. So the reading plans were gone over with parents at parent-teacher conferences. We also, and you have some examples here, we created resources for families. That's part of the law as well, that all parents have access to resources to practice activities at home with their child that's on a reading plan. So that's just one example of the activities that we that we created here in our district and shared with parents. Also, students on a reading plan have to be monitored weekly. So the teachers have to assess them weekly on their progress. And then at 10 weeks, the law says we have to notify parents of their progress. So again, through NextPath, we can notify them as well, but they will receive a report in 10 weeks for their child on a reading plan to see their progress. So what is included on the reading plan that the parent receives? So they will receive, the report tells them what percentile rank their child fell in. So, and even the overall results that a parent receives, they see their child's percentile rank. So for example, if they have to be below the 25th percentile to be on a reading plan, so they know whether they're at the 24th or the 1st. So are they really close, or do we have more additional work to do as well? And then also in the reading plan, what supports and services. So it will say, they're receiving small group support from the reading specialist or in Title I or with Reading Corps. And then what specific skill are we focusing on? So even though they qualified in oral reading fluency, we do another diagnostic test that's short to say we need to work on blends or segmenting or vowel sounds, so that's the part that we talk to the parent about, like, here's specifically really what we're working on and this is what you can help us with. And then we share with them about how their progress will be monitored and when they'll receive an update. So that was all shared with them at parent-teacher conferences. So what are our next steps and what are we currently doing? So we have implemented the reading plans at the end of January once the assessments were completed. Teachers and they have support too. Our reading specialists, title teachers, academic learning coaches are helping do that weekly progress monitoring. That's a heavy lift too. You know, because as I mentioned, with 40% of students on a plan, that's quite a few students that have to be monitored. We will be sending out the 10-week update in a couple weeks here. I'm working with Patrick on a district website, so we have a website that explains Act 20 that we'll be, you know, implementing, as well as a website that has additional parent resources and maybe some videos on how to read with your child or how to practice some of these skills with your child. We will be doing the spring assessment, and what the state law includes is that your spring assessment has to be 45 days before the school year ends, so that you have at least another 45 days to work on a plan if they qualify or if they remain on the plan. So already in March, and another interesting thing is that window is the same window as forward, so that is quite a bit for our third graders, so we're working on trying to balance those assessment windows. Also, as part of Act 20, summer school we are required to offer summer school to any student, specifically starting in third grade on a reading plan. So working with Paul, all 12 of our sites will have a summer reading program for our third graders on a reading plan, as well as we hope to be able to open it up to second and first grade. So just need to know a little bit more about our numbers, but that is our plan. We'd love to have, starting in first grade, if you're on a plan, to invite you to the specific summer reading program as well, that will use a research-based reading resource for teaching the summer school class for those students. And then lastly, what's required, so this will be coming to PPC by July 1st of 2025. We have to have a promotion policy for third grade students if they are on our reading plan as well. So we currently have promotion policies in place for 4th and 8th grade, but we do not for third grade. So we'll be working on that policy. So right now, you know, the focus of the policy would be, if I'm a third grader on a reading plan, they have to be above the 25th percentile and they have to be proficient on forward in order to be off of a reading plan. So if not, they move to 4th grade with their plan, or whatever we describe in that board policy. Working with Denise and Mark as well, you know, Neola, because it's statewide, they're working on a policy. So I plan to see what Neola's provided and build from there. So that is kind of the update on Act 20, and I will say, you know, I want to thank our classroom teachers as well as our specialists. You know, all of these assessments are administered one-on-one, so, you know, we did provide subs, but it's a really heavy lift, and, you know, and we've been trying to help, you know, take as much off the classroom teachers as we can with resources and support, but it's still been a heavy lift. And again, I think, obviously, Act 20 is very important in that we want all students to be reading on grade level, so there's some really, you know, I think it's important. It helps us really monitor those kids. We did find that there were really very few kids after the assessment that were either not already receiving some type of service. So we have to feel good about, we have accurately identified students in our district that are already receiving support. But, you know, it's something we have to closely monitor, and we want to continue to help our students improve in literacy, and Act 20 will help us do that as well. So, thank you. Any questions?
I have 3 questions.
Sure.
When was this put into place?
Well, it was, this fall we had the option to start it, so it was required for all districts to start in January. They had the
25.
option to start in the fall. We did not, because we didn't feel we had time to train our teachers on the assessment, and so we trained them on the assessment the first professional development day in the fall, so that they were ready to administer it. We felt more comfortable with that, so compliance-wise, we were in compliance
Sure.
starting
Oh,
in
okay.
January.
Oh, that's great. Do you have a concern about having enough resources to implement the plans, like with title teachers and aides you're using and reading specialists? Do you have concern that we have gaps that we need to fill with more support?
Yes, I mean, yes, I would say that, you know, obviously, especially in the earlier grades. We know early intervention, once students reach third grade, it's difficult. You don't really see a lot of that gap closing in middle and high school. So yes, but I know we also have to balance all of the needs of the district and the other areas where we need staff and resources. But yes, it's definitely an area that, we want to continue to provide as many resources as possible to support our students.
And then my last one is, what was the parent response? Like, I know you had 10 days to get them, was it 10 days?
Yeah, I
You had
think
a
it's
Or no, 10
10 or
weeks,
15,
10 weeks, but
well, 10 weeks they receive an update, but in
Update.
10 to 15
Okay.
days, they had to receive the
the
report.
report. So, did all parents acknowledge?
No. So what we did is we followed up at parent-teacher conferences. Elementary has a pretty high 95 to 100% parents that attend. So any parent that hadn't acknowledged, we acknowledged it with them at the conference. And we do follow-ups with phone calls, but, we do a certain number of attempts and we're required by law to provide the information to them, but it doesn't have to be accepted. We're gonna do our due diligence to do that, and then use conference time.
And so just to close the loop, so even if the parent doesn't acknowledge, we're still doing the work to get the child
Yes.
this. Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's unfortunate when parents aren't engaged enough to care about the reading level of their child. It's
Yeah,
really
as long as we
sad.
know we've sent it to
Yep,
them,
yeah, you've done your
then
job.
we start the plan.
Yep, okay, thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, I have a couple questions. So the weekly testing, can you describe the test to me? Is this, or monitoring, is this a short, get together with the kid, read something, and I don't know, I pay attention to the number of words missed or mispronounced, or what, can you describe that to me?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so really, it's a shorter test. It will typically, because we want to see if they're improving on that oral reading fluency assessment, so typically it'll be progress monitoring them weekly on that, having them do a 1-minute timed reading. Or we would do that as well as, if they're specifically working on blends or something, we would also check in to see, are they making progress in that area? So hopefully it's 5 minutes or less that we want to be careful not to over assess kids.
Right.
And we have to be compliant.
Right.
And make sure we know kids are making progress, so we try to keep it to that 1 to 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's my concern. Obviously, I want every kid to be reading at grade level every year. And I'm really glad to see this emphasis on literacy, and phonics. I'm also a little concerned, so we all know that kids are all very different and some kids respond to different approaches. I think phonics is great. My kids learned a lot with phonics, but not every kid does. I don't think there was any phonics instruction to speak of when I went to school, or I'm sure there was. It was a long time ago. But I remember, I'm pretty sure it was whole language when I went to elementary school. And I benefited, I was okay because I was read to all the time. I mean, reading was just part of my family's culture. So I'm just wondering though, does this push everything else out the door? Does this squeeze all the air out of the classroom so you can't, use other methods? It does.
Well, I mean, it's a great question, and I guess for me, yes, that's a concern, but I think we have to, again, as a district, ensure that my focus is always on balance. We don't want to swing too far one way or the other, because when we do, then we miss other important pieces. So the messaging has been that, yes, we have to, address the skills within the reading plan, but we know that vocabulary, comprehension, and decoding are all part of the important components of reading, and so we're trying to ensure that we don't just focus on phonics and the fluency piece, but we continue to focus on those important 5 components of reading instruction.
one thing to point out, Kathy, that's really a good question, but research shows that students who struggle learning to read respond really well typically with this explicit phonemic instruction, but also all readers become better readers through that process.
Good.
So, that's, I think, helpful. It might not be as fun. It's hard, it can be hard work. And I think there, if you really dive deep, there are some in the past, not here, of course, but, other places where people would say, well, it's just not as fun. It's harder. Well, it is, because it's scientific, really. But this is really interesting to see this all pan out, because, this has been on my radar for so long. And so now to see this coming in and how we're implementing it, I'm just so proud of everyone to see this. This is, you were ready for it. And the 40%, while of course we would want to be, lower than 40%, but it's nice to see that we're not one of the schools that really is having the highest percent of students struggling with that screener. Something I think that's important to point out is a lot of this, like measuring, letter naming, and fluency, our teachers were doing anyway.
Yes.
But now it just formalizes things so that we're all on the same page, but not just we in a school or in a grade, but across our district. And this is really going to help us going forward address these challenges that we're seeing in the high school right now, because those kiddos that fell through the cracks that we're catching, we didn't have that before. So I wish we could just fast forward 10 years and see what, I don't want to lose 10 years, but just to see what that is. This is really great. I was talking recently with a superintendent about something that I see often, where families are recognizing that their student is struggling with learning to read, or maybe with just learning, and they don't know where to go next. And I'm wondering if this website that's being created, if maybe you already have plans, but if there could be a component to say, like, what's next? What if you feel like, I don't know, I'm not coming up with the right wording right now, but to help guide parents in, what to do if these things aren't working. There may be more that's needed. There may be a learning disability at play that you're recognizing likely, but we can't diagnose according to how Wisconsin diagnoses learning disabilities. So, I just wonder if this might be a good place to include some of that educational, so parents can get like, okay, this is where I go. Because I know that it's a hard place to be, and you just don't know where to go, and you just think, well, aren't our teachers or schools just gonna get that? And we can't, because of the way Wisconsin classifies those learning disabilities and how they need to be diagnosed by a medical professional or someone with that neuropsych testing capability. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling, but I am really excited to see this, to see what comes out of this. And I want to thank all of our teachers and everyone who's been a part of getting this in place. I no longer have someone in the K-3 grades, and I'm like, oh darn, I wish, because then I would have been experiencing it. And there's so often we talk about things, and then I go to conferences and see real time exactly how it's been transitioned out to our schools. And so I missed this one, darn it. Thank you so much. This was wonderful to hear.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone, presentation on advanced level courses overview, Dr. Allison DeGraff and Chris Medenwalt.
You can do it, Gretchen. You can do it.
It's not easy to, sorry,
No, you're just knocking out of the
I
park.
miss
right now.
Patrick, a whole big bunch.
Can I just do this? I could probably do this. It's like the same look and everything. All right, good evening. I was thinking during your safety message that there's 3 of us in here who regularly put on a football helmet in high school, and there's plenty of times we called it getting your bell rung, because we didn't know any better, but it was a concussion. There's no doubt about it. So I would imagine if the 3 of us could remember how many times that happened, that we've had a few. Okay, so I'm going to just go through a variety of pieces of data about our college credit courses and our advanced courses that we have. And so as I was thinking about it and looking at it, I wanted to make sure, you know, all the data and to see if there was any changes. So in general, right, our high school enrollment, and this is from WISE Dash, has stayed steady, right? It's a little bit of a decline overall if you look at the trend line there. But we anticipate, in general, it's going to stay a little bit steady. And I wanted to put this in here because if you've looked ahead, right, and you've had all this for, you know, a month plus now, the next slide is super messy. But it breaks things down a little more of where we're at from school to school to school. And so you can see at our 2 largest high schools, we do have a little bit of a downward trend. It gets a little bit tricky when you look at the other ones a little bit, right? Rock River looks like it has an upward trend, and it probably does, but it kind of varies on what program you can be in and that sort of thing. And AVA looks like it has a downward trend, but right now currently AVA has the highest enrollment it's had in the last 5 years. So, you know, that fluctuates quite a bit with trends and that sort of thing. AVA had a big enrollment jump when there was the shooting in Madison, and there was a whole bunch of folks wanted to do that, so we saw an enrollment jump there. And then RockU has stayed pretty steady all the way through. It's had a few fluctuations, but in general, that's where our enrollment's been at the high school level, according to WISE Dash. So advanced placement courses, and just to make sure we're all, you know, speaking the same language, advanced placement courses, we often just call them AP courses. And our courses designed through the College Board. And advanced placement courses can be taught by any high school teacher. However, not every high school teacher wants to do that. It does require some additional training to go, and we have, our teachers often participate in summer institutes to go and either be prepared if they've never taught AP before, or to go and refresh their skills, particularly when AP courses change. If they change a setup or they change particular focus areas. So you can see in general, here's where we've been at we do not have any students who have taken AP courses at Rock River. So the breakdown is for Craig Parker, RockU, and AVA. And you can see we've had a little bit of fluctuation here and there. One of the things I did overall is just looked at, and I didn't put a slide in here to say, well, where are we at for all of these courses per student over the 3 years? And in general, the number I believe was within 300ths all the way through, right, year to year to year. So we have stayed pretty steady according to our student enrollment as far as students taking these types of courses. But those are just the general numbers in our AP courses. We haven't had any course that I can say is particular popular or not popular. For some of you, you know that sometimes AP courses, any course, but certainly an AP course, can have high enrollment strictly by who's teaching it. Kids are attracted to people they like. And so if they have particular teachers that they like teach them, those can be strong. That teacher ends up leaving. Sometimes if the staff member who takes that over, it can change pretty quick. So there's our advanced placement numbers. Here's our AP test scores over the last 3 years. And this is against the state. And so it's a 3 or above. And just to remind you that a 3 or above is where many colleges will take them as college credit. Not all colleges will take them as college credit for a 3 or above. There are also many colleges that if you come in with an AP score of a 3 or above, if you're in a particular major, they're going to tell you need to take their version anyways. So if there's many colleges where an AP Calc, you can have a 5 in AP Calc, and if you're going into math in their area, you're going to take Calc with them. It doesn't happen at every college, but it happens at some. So you can see we've had a steady improvement over the last 3 years. It wasn't just a few months ago. You saw we brought a bunch of AP scholars in here and their teachers to recognize them having scores that were above the average. So we have consistently, or at least in the last 3 years, gotten a little better at how our students are performing. Transcripted credit. Just as a reminder of what transcripted credit is for us, the vast majority of transcripted credit is transcripted through Blackhawk Technical College. So our teachers teach coursework that is aligned to BTC. It is taught through Blackboard, which is their student system, is where we manage it all. And our teachers have to qualify through the Higher Learning Commission to make sure that they are the credentials. For many of them, that either means a master's degree in a specific area or at least 18 credits of coursework in a particular area. In order to do that, we will offer to pay for that coursework for teachers, but they don't always want to do that, right? It's more work, doesn't necessarily fit into some things. When we have teachers leave, that creates a problem for us. So that's what I pointed out here with CHS, all right? At Craig, we had a pretty steep drop, right, from 21 to 22. And it really was, we had 3 different elective teachers leave, and we couldn't teach the TC courses they taught. We couldn't find somebody to teach them. Saturday is when we had to have all of our information into Blackhawk Tech to be approved to teach TC for the fall. All right, so if we have somebody leave in between there and have somebody hired, we have to go through that process, but they're not required to certify that teacher. Which is why in our course guide, it always says that it may be transcripted credit depending upon whether or not we have somebody who can do it, because while that is somewhat under our control, it's not entirely under our control. If we have some teachers that don't meet the standards, and we've had teachers meet the standards one year and not the next year, not because Blackhawk changed anything they're doing, but because the Higher Learning Commission has said, well, this is where this has to be. So that was a big dive for us at that time. And then we used to, our honors chemistry was TC chemistry at one time. But TC chemistry changed their curriculum dramatically at Blackhawk a few years ago. And we went through and said, you know what, here's what we know is we will have a lot of students fail TC chemistry. And we didn't think it was in our best interest to continue to do that. I don't know anybody teaching TC chemistry at the high school level anymore because of the changes there. Our chemistry teachers really believed it likely went to something that was closer to a third-year chemistry course. Well, this is introductory chemistry for us, right? Remember that if a student fails a TC course, the advantage of transcripted credit, and our previous superintendent, Mr. Pufalo, would always say it's the gold standard, and that's not untrue. However, if you fail a TC course, right, the reason it's the gold standard is you get credit, right? I have college credit, I have college transcript, that's great. You can go anywhere with that, right? They may or may not take it in Wisconsin. Transcripted credit, at least in the courses we offer in general, is accepted at any public and private university. But if you fail it, the same thing is true, right? So if I would happen to fail my junior year TC chemistry course, right, and have a 0-point grade point and a failure, when I go to apply, right, I'm going to have a transcript that says I already have a 0 grade point. That part might not hurt me that bad until I apply for financial aid. And my 0-point grade point average limits the financial aid I'm given because I've already proven I'm not a very good college student, right, and worth the risk. So this is something we've started to look a lot more seriously at. It's something that we've had communication with BTC, like who's communicating with these students who are getting a BTC transcript, right? That they're not in good standing with you. Because they would communicate with their own students that they're not in good standing. Right, so it is something we've worked at, but that's really the big dive down right there. That's 100% the reason, right, is that we discontinued teaching TC chemistry as an honors course. Overall, go ahead.
Still offer AP Chem.
We offer AP Chem. Yep, just not TC. But we offer it at both. Yep.
Is the, I mean, so what that TC turned into, was that really closer to the AP chemistry anyway?
No. It took a jump that, I'll just be upfront, it was a really short discussion. When I said, well, what do we want to do, right? Where can we be? And everybody's like, the percentage of students we felt that would be prepared to pass that course was so small that we would have never run the course. It just changed dramatically. And like I said, I don't know a high school that's offering TC chemistry. So, and then RUHS and transcripted credit, and you're going to see their numbers kind of fluctuate a little bit, and you'll see why at the next slide a little bit. I think it's the next slide. No, it's a couple slides away. Project Lead the Way. Project Lead the Way courses are in Janesville taught in several different areas. Some of them are engineering courses, some of them are math courses, right? They're kind of all over. Some of them are science courses. Project Lead the Way is unique in that once you're trained in Project Lead the Way, you can teach it, and it isn't dependent upon your licensure. It's dependent upon the training. And so once you have the training, you can do that. One of the things that Project Lead the Way through reflection finally got better at is it used to be that if I got trained in a Project Lead the Way course, and Project Lead the Way was enormously popular, I would guess maybe 8-ish years ago, maybe 10-ish years ago when it first came on, if like everybody's got to have Project Lead the Way courses, and their curriculum is solid, very rigorous. But what would happen is districts would pump a bunch of money into typically a CTE teacher to teach a bunch of CTE or to Project Lead the Way courses. And that person would then go and turn that around into getting a $10,000 raise at the district, 30 miles away, saying, I can come teach all your Project Lead the Way courses. And then you'd have to train another person. And Project Lead the Way now, once you train somebody, and if that person happens to go somewhere else, they will train the next person. Yes, you already paid for that training. You paid for the training, not for the person. So that is helpful that when people move on, that we're able to do that, where that goes. Again, I will say this sometimes fluctuates a little bit due to who's teaching, and it also fluctuates. Sometimes the courses we run at Craig or Parker are like the exact opposite. It just, sometimes it's tradition and history, what we've run, and so kids will continue to take that. And then at RUHS, the reason for that jump is honestly just some training and offering some different courses in the science area is where that jump came from. Is, hey, I'd like to offer this, and we provided some training, and kids wanted it. Start College Now, early college credit, and RUHS. So Start College Now is affiliated with the technical college system. So that, for us, our students almost exclusively taking classes at BTC. And they have to fill out those forms in advance. Again, those forms were due in March, right? Actually, they were due on Saturday for our students who you will approve of those students to take classes at Blackhawk Technical College in the fall. They have to have planned that far ahead. And if you've read through that, you know that it has to be a variety of factors in there. We cannot offer a similar class, that sort of thing, in order for us to do that. Early college credit is really the same exact thing. It's just at a 4-year university. So for the majority of our students, that's Whitewater. Sometimes it varies in things, but for the majority of our students, that's Whitewater. And then RUHS, our students, those are our students taking college credit at BTC, right? They're just walking up the stairs, right? Because they're already out there. And there you can see the numbers are really high, and we want those to be really high at RUHS. Ideally, those numbers will go up there. And all of this due to, well, the RUHS is due to the foresight of the board to have a a charter school at BTC, and so the board covers those costs. Start College Now and early college credit, as you know, is a state law. We're required to cover those credits for those. So all of those courses are the School District of Janesville paying for students to get college credit, which is great when that happens. We have a few students who do that both at Arise and, yes, we have some students who do that at Rock River. It really kind of varies. Yep, go ahead.
Quick question, so these are counts of students?
I think classes, actually. Nope, those would be student counts. Student counts in a class. So, like, I'll give you an example. At Rock University, there's not 166 students, but there's that many classes taken by our students. So a student could be in that count 4 times, if that makes sense. And the last one is advanced standing. And advanced standing is us at Janesville teaching our curriculum that has been approved by BTC. So it would be a course where we'd say, well, this is what we're going to teach them. Yep, that looks good to me, right? And what happens is when they enroll at BTC, they will have advanced standing. They will no longer need to take that course. It's not the same as TC. They don't get credit right away when all that sort of thing. They do have to enroll at BTC for that to work for them. For us, this is a lot of classes in CTE. It's a lot of our classes in welding and that sort of thing, because you still have to go to do that sort of thing. And again, sometimes this varies based on our staffing. Sometimes this varies just on student enrollment and what they like and don't like. And for both advanced standing and TC, it really sometimes does come down to a staffing issue and who can teach some things, and sometimes about just enrollment numbers of where can we do this. Our CTE departments at both Parker and Craig, typically, maybe there'll be one staff member that doesn't teach an overload, right? They're almost always teaching overloads, and sometimes that's just because we can't find a tech ed teacher. And so in order for us to offer all the courses, but in doing so, that means, if we have a course enrollment of 18 in one and 12 in another, that 1 and 12 is just not going to run. And sometimes we get into that when some of these courses. So in general, those are all our numbers from the last 3 years as far as opportunities for college credit and courses that will get students kind of, for lack of a better term, a leg up in their post-secondary career, depending on where they go. So, questions?
Just a quick question.
Yep.
So it looks from the school enrollment, there might be I'm just estimating 300 students difference between Craig and Parker? correct?
Yeah, it's last year it was about 2-ish, and I think this year it might be even under 2, but it's that difference has shrunk a bit lately.
Okay, so then
Yeah, about 2.
can you explain maybe some of the factors, and maybe you already did, but when I'm looking at the AP advanced placement courses, it's almost half of
Yep.
what Craig and Parker is, and then when you look at, let's see, Project Lead the Way, it's almost half, Craig's leading half of what Parker is.
So-
And it's very similar to the advanced standing, so I don't wanna say what's going on with Parker as opposed to Craig, is it a teacher issue, is it a credentialing issue? It just seems to be such wide gaps there when they're not that much of a gap in enrollment.
Yeah, my suspicion is that it's tradition. This is what we have taken here overall. And in particular, I can, if we go to Project Lead the Way, that's this of there's courses that run all the time at Craig in Project Lead the Way and get 3 kids who will sign up for them at Parker, right? It's just, other than as we go through like the staffing process that we've started to go through, There'll be some times where Parker will run a Project Lead the Way class, and we'll be surprised, like, yeah, we haven't run that in 3 years, right? I don't have a better explanation other than I do think part of it is, once a class starts running, it keeps running. And once a class doesn't run for a couple of years, the chances of kids signing up for it, even if they see it in the book, they've never heard about it, they've never seen anybody take it. I would suspect, and I didn't look back, I would suspect if I look back 10 years, that would be what this is too, is that people at Parker just didn't take them, but I did not look back 10 years to see where that was.
I wouldn't expect you to look back 10 years. It's just that particular slide, the AP slide. You know, we talk about rigor in our curriculum. Well, if I was a parent looking at that, I'd be sending my kid to Craig because there's more opportunity there.
I don't think the opportunity is different. It's because the advanced placement courses offered at both, it's students signing up for them. So some of this could be the same courses may run. There's a few courses that don't run at one or the other. It's sections, right?
So then how do you explain that then, why kids aren't enrolling at Parker?
They are enrolling, just not the same number, not in the same volume. So we may run one section of AP Calc at Parker, and we'll run, 2 sections or 3 sections at Craig.
So again, I'll ask why? Why aren't more kids signing up for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's something we will end up doing a lot more surveying and that sort of thing. It's not something we've surveyed on. Like I said, I think it's tradition. Yep, I don't disagree. I mean, it's in general, it's a glaring difference, right?
Yeah,
And all the way through.
okay, thank you.
I am questioning, I know that there is a socioeconomic difference between Craig and Parker. Is Parker Title I? It's not.
They would be if we assigned Parker to Title I, we would suck most of the Title I funds from our elementary schools.
Oh, okay.
Because it's an interesting formula that
Okay.
is put forth. They would be Title I if
All right.
we would allow that.
So that makes sense to me. There is a cost now for AP. It's not a cost to sign up for the class.
Correct.
But if you're going to take the test, you as an individual have to pay for that and sign up for it. It's not part of the class. You have to have someone who will go in and set up the profile and do this and do that and click through and then pay. That's not to say that there aren't payment support opportunities
Yep.
for students,
There definitely are.
but you
Yep.
have to ask for them, and many
Correct.
students will not do that.
Yeah, there's a stigma sometimes to asking for help. There's no
Absolutely.
question.
So what I will say is, I think there could be an opportunity gap, disparity between the two schools that is playing into it. It's not the whole picture, but I think it absolutely could be a part of the picture. And I think it's something, funding is always a problem, but I would like to see how we can change the way that we run our AP classes so that everyone who signs up just gets enrolled and we figure out how to pay for it. Because I think.
in the test.
Yeah, in the test. Because there are people who just decide, I can think of people right now who I know would have passed tests and just didn't do it because it was an extra expense. It's like $100 per test?
Yeah, it's gotten up to
It's
about
not like
$100.
$10.
No.
And so if you're in one class, okay. But, and you have to decide in like October. It's
Yep.
super early.
And pay in October.
Really early. So that's something, I feel like we need to look at this and figure out why this is happening and try to solve it, because they are rigorous classes.
Yeah,
Very,
absolutely.
very rigorous. And of course, they're not for everyone, but having had a kid go through AP courses, they learn a lot. And I can see, the opportunity for preparation for if you are pursuing a 4-year university or something else in terms of higher level education. They really do prepare you for that in a different way. So I think this is good for us to really see these numbers so that we can, get a feel for, what's happening across our district for some of these different courses. It's so intriguing to see this. if anyone else has anything like to say.
I actually wouldn't have known. I think there's more communication that we could be doing to parents, because I wouldn't, had I not been on the board for the last 9 years, I wouldn't have known about YA, TC, AP, all that kind of stuff. So I would encourage, I don't know how you do it, but work with the buildings to get more communication out there to parents. I actually encourage my kids to do TC. My big kids did a lot of TCs. Aubrey started with some APs. My kids, my older two at least, are not solid 4-hour exam takers. But with TC, even in Alabama, Easton has over a semester that he got credit for. So I would actually encourage TC. There's no extra cost. So maybe if there are socioeconomic implications or we can't fund it, I mean, TC is dang good too. And they go, Aubrey went with over a semester and East just over it as well. So, anyway, that's also a good route. But I just think it's more communication to families. The kids aren't gonna know probably.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and when we get perfect at communication, we'll let you know. But I will tell you, one of the things we did at both Parker and Craig this year is we did our version of piloting ninth grade conferences and assigned people to meet with every ninth grade family who came in. We'll tweak that again next year and how that works. The idea was to look at capstone work and in general really look at things like YA, of like, hey, YA could be for anybody, right? There's capstone of learning in the workplace. One of the things we talked about though, actually today I was in a math meeting and we talked about, all right, are we understanding, pathways in math? Are we understanding what's the pathway to an AP course, to a TC course, and those sorts of things? And are we getting that in front? And we can always improve on doing that and making sure that our academic and career planning is stronger. There's no question.
I have one last question. So for those TC classes, how do students obtain their transcript? Because they're not given it.
You have to request it.
Yeah, you
So what's the process for that?
It's so we will help students enroll through Blackboard to BTC. And once you're enrolled, you're a BTC student, and you request your transcripts just like you would if you were a 20-year-old returning student, and request through BTC. We don't have access to them. We never see them. We're not have access to that system. So you have to. It is one of the challenges, honestly, of TC courses is you have to navigate one more system, because now you're navigating BTC system as well.
I wonder, do students know that? I just wonder, do they?
I can guarantee you they've been told that more than once. Whether or not they know that, I'm unsure.
Thank you for putting this together.
Absolutely.
So we could, see a district overview for all of these things. I think it was really beneficial for us to get that snapshot. I'm sure we'll continue to have more questions about these things.
Anytime.
Coming your way. Thank you so much. All right, moving on, overview of staffing projections, Mr. Scott Garner.
No presentation, no slideshows tonight. But next month, look out. Very quick update for you on staffing projections. Honestly, I'll just give you an update on our staffing. This week, we're meeting with each level, elementary, middle, and high school, to finalize and formulate the schedule and staffing for each level based on what we know to be at this time. It's always that case, right? What we do know at this time is that we have 35 retirements and known resignations that we're planning for right now at this time. And as we move through that, then we'll work with each level to, again, do all the transfers and or postings that we need to create as a result. One of the things that we're trying to do with postings, just so you know, you probably have seen Craig and Parker postings already for next year. That's an aggressive timeline that Mr. Holzman has kind of asked us to do. And as a result, our hope is that we get in on the market very early so that we can get quality candidates to apply for those positions and get them into the buildings. That is our hope. And so far, We'll see. We had a job fair last week at Marshall Middle School. It's our spring job fair. It's earlier than what we've held it in the past, so we had a little bit lower turnout, but still we had great candidates show up for all different positions in the district, including teacher positions. And so we are excited about those possibilities. Another thing we're doing to try to retain and attract teachers is we're working with, and this is Chris and Allison, who are working with UW Whitewater, the relationship there. We're building that relationship to actually attract resident teachers. So we have a resident teacher from UW Whitewater. We're working with them to create internship positions and possibilities, and they actually had a table at our job fair as well. So anybody who walked in, people who are looking for paraprofessional positions could sign up for UW Whitewater courses to earn their teaching degree. So we're really trying to connect everyone together so that we all push forward to get people in the buildings that are good for kids. Ultimately, that's what we're trying for. As we look at the overall plan itself, we're projecting at this time, it's at least in the buildings, based on enrollment, we're looking at a relatively neutral staffing plan that doesn't account for necessarily right now for special ed or title. We're looking at all of that. So you'll see that presented in April, probably actually the Monday before the board meeting. If in fact you want me on the agenda, we'll present that ahead of time and give me a practice run. And then additionally, we have the CISA 2, just so you know, CISA 2 job fair that we're taking 2 principals with us to, again, hire teachers. That's our hope. We're going to, as you know, we've gone to several different job fairs, the Whitewater Job Fair. We went to Cambridge last year. This was a successful one. We're anticipating a lot of good candidates coming our way. So we're really trying to get people to Janesville and get them in our buildings so that we have top-notch candidates for our kids. We feel like posting aggressively, both in February now and in early March. We did a great job of getting people in the buildings last year. We want to do even better this year. So that's our hope. Do you have any questions? It's not, I'm sorry I don't have a lot of specifics right now because we're getting those done this week, so.
Yeah, having these overviews is so helpful so that we know what's going on and it's great to know both those job fairs. The retirement number or resignation, how does that compare? I wish that I would store that every year, but I don't in my
So,
brain.
yeah, our
35.
retirement numbers are pretty close. I think we have 28 or 29 retirements, and then we have 6 more known resignations. And the resignations are for life events and
Right.
other things. But the retirements are pretty much on par as what we've had. A little higher maybe, I think,
Yeah, just by a couple.
yeah.
But
So-
there was a huge amount of our employees who qualified, and this is not that number. So we're grateful for that.
We are very grateful for
And I
that.
would also say that non-certified staff have 30 days prior
Yeah.
for notification for retirement.
And so what I'm talking about are just certified right now on this list, so. One more thing I forgot to mention, the student teachers, we're trying to take advantage of our I shouldn't say that. We want to make sure that our student teachers know that Janesville's a great place to work, so we're trying to get them hired for the district. So we've interviewed or asked our principals to really pay close attention to those student teachers that we have, get into the classrooms and possibly offer them a position. We've already worked with 3 known student teachers for next year.
I think that's wonderful. I'm
Yeah.
so glad that we're doing that.
Yes.
They're already learning our district, right?
Yes.
And we're already investing in those individuals. When I had a student teaching internship, because I was in a graduate program doing that. And when I was finishing up, it was like a 10-week thing instead of a whole semester. And I didn't have a job lined up. I didn't know. Because it was like, you don't apply for jobs in like October or November.
Right.
But one of the fellow Spanish teachers said to me, "What are you doing when you are done? Do you want a job?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he just knew someone.
Yeah.
But I got that opportunity from someone. I wasn't there, but that was a networking opportunity.
Right, we're trying to take away that anxiety and fear of unknown by saying, you have a job with us, we'll figure it out.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that we're doing that.
So,
All right,
thank you.
thank you so much. Okay, everyone, boy, we are moving through this. Benefits renewal update. Thank you for your patience, Jamie Brown.
Absolutely.
There we go, sorry. We'll also talk about the medical loss ratio, and then we'll go over the renewal timeline. So first, the medical loss ratio, and you've seen this chart before, except for the numbers at the bottom, those are updated. A reminder, the medical loss ratio is the comparison of cost of claims incurred by the insurance to the premiums collected. So when I gave a Q1 update, Mercy was sitting at 91% for an MLR, and now they are sitting at 111. Yes. Dean came in at 107% in Q1, and now we are at 101.84. So it can fluctuate. It can change, it can go up, it can go down. So, but as of right now, that is where we are sitting. For Mercy, for Q2, currently the enrollment is 763 employees. That is not far off from our Q1, and it's a normal ebb and flow. For the total spend on claims, just over 5 million for Mercy. 10.5 is on prescriptions, and that's fairly the same as the Q1 for prescriptions. You can see on the chart, this one I did compare Q1 and Q2 on employee spend. And so you can kind of see how it's moving along at the $3,000 to $4,000 line. I do have that one bolded. That's kind of, right in the middle there. So we did see a 2% increase for that. As far as prescriptions, all of these you saw on Q1 except for the Taltz. That one is new, and I don't know if I've ever seen that one. So we'll kind of be keeping an eye on that and just kind of seeing where that's coming in at the market. For Dean, we are currently sitting at 207 employees enrolled. Again, a very similar ebb and flow. Their total spend on claims is just over 1.6 million, and they are currently at 19% for their prescriptions. They were previously at 16% in Q1. As far as total spend for the employee and for Dean, again, it's a very similar as the year goes along, a normal increase in that. For the prescriptions, again, the same except for the trilogy at the end. That's a new one too. So that was swapped out for a asthma medication. Any questions on Dean and Mercy and how the plan is going throughout the year? Okay. So the renewal timeline, just wanted to provide you with some dates to look forward to. April 7th, we will present the initial renewal to PPC. We'll turn around the next day and we will present to the full board. And at that point, we don't expect any action to be taken. We'll allow that time for you to ask any questions or just take some time to think about it. April 22nd, I'll come back and we'll vote at that time. On April 23rd, we have the third benefits advisory meeting, which then I will share that information with them at that point. I mean, obviously it's already public at that point, but we'll have those conversations. And then a tentative open enrollment will be beginning in early May. Any questions?
Was the benefit advisory meeting, I know it met last fall, was there a meeting in between that and April here?
Yes, we met in October, January, we'll meet again in March, and then this one was a little pending, dependent on when the renewal came in.
Okay, thank you.
I was gonna ask the same thing. So this April meeting is just to go over, like, this is what this all means to everyone once, you know, whatever is decided is decided. We don't know what that will be because we haven't seen. So I'm glad to see that there will be another meeting in March prior to all of this. And can you remind us again, who is participating with that committee, just so we know? There's, the JEA has representation, correct?
Yes, so when we chose the members of that advisory committee, we chose some from each employee group. So there's custodial, maintenance, food service, teacher, JEA, non-certified staff in there. So it's a good mix of all the employee groups.
And so there's good participation across, well, you've had two, so you'll see, I would imagine that there's, okay, that's great. We're glad for that because we just want to make sure that, you know, everyone is getting the info, and thank you for having another one scheduled in March. The MLR, these are, you know, you always want it to be under 100 if possible, but this is promising that they're not substantially, when you look at, you know, last year for Dean, 164% versus 101. That's a big difference. So I'm glad to see that because of course then hopefully the rates that they're gonna come back with are not as high. They shouldn't be based on MLR. We're gonna cross our fingers
And our toes.
and our toes and elbows and
Everything.
knees.
Everything's
I'm
crossed.
not gonna cross my eyes. Okay, all right, come back, insurance providers with good info for us, please. All right, everyone, thank you, Jamie. 1.8, there, do I read through, what is the appropriate thing? All of these Neola policies? I need a motion to full board for adoption of this long list of policies.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
We
Oh,
had discussed.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I missed that part. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna
Any,
say-
any comments, questions
I
about
sent
this?
one formatting correction
Yes.
with that, and I think we're good.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would assume that those would be, do we verify in
don't know.
here? So we want to make sure that Michelle had one thing, and this was, I'm just going to say, a lot of policies to go through. And I know everyone who researched them, I know it's your favorite. I'm gonna be honest, it's not my favorite thing to do. And this was a long list, but it's really important stuff. So I wanna give a shout out to Michelle because that shows, I mean, she's combing through it and catching things, so,
Yeah, thank you. PO 2131 had some formatting issues to be corrected before they go final.
what was that
What is the
formatting?
educational outcome at the top of the list?
Okay. All right, so we just wanna make sure that that's adjusted. And I think
Yeah, no content changes.
there's no content changes, just formatting. So make sure that's taken care of before it goes to full board. Otherwise, then, if there are no other comments or questions on this wonderful list of policies. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes unanimously. All right, everyone, we made it to the end, and this meeting went faster than I thought it was going to. We had a lot of content. Kudos to all of you. We didn't have any controversial things that we were really, I mean, we always talk because we care about these. I'm glad that we have good conversation, so, because we care.
Are you feeling nervous that we're not meeting the same length as
No,
the?
no. I am proud of our group
Agenda?
that we do not, I would not want to be involved in that. I'm just gonna say, I have people that I am responsible for that I have to get to after this and transport them places. I always make time though, I adjust accordingly. I don't think there's any other announcements or updates. Our next agenda meeting for PPC is Monday, next Monday. So if there's anything that you'd like us to make sure we're addressing, get in touch with us about that. Otherwise, our next meeting is the first Monday in April. Is it April 1st?
7th,
The 7th. Okay, I'm glad it's not April 1st.
the board meeting's the next day.
Yeah, okay. So April 7th, we will see you all, same time, same place. Thank you, everyone. Adjourned.